Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Barbell Effect podcast. I am here with, the homies, Katy and Gavin, and we also have a special guest today.
Our
if you
first
want to
guest.
introduce yourself.
Woo.
Hey everybody, my name is Link. My real name is Marissa, but I go by Link. I am a fitness and nutrition coach, and I work with former athletes trying to just build a badass body, a badass mind, and just get into the best shape they've ever been in. I'm really big on not comparing yourself to your time as a former athlete, and just creating a new life after fitness or life after sports kind of journey, and really embracing who you are in that phase of life and finding an approach that is the most sustainable approach that you can possibly take. I want everything to feel like it's just second nature. You go to the gym because that's just what you do. You eat a certain way because that's just what you do. You get your steps, you get your sleep, you prioritize stress management and your water intake because that's just what you do. And that's the life that you live, and making your fitness and nutrition get to be as easy as it possibly can be. And I'm also a mom and a dog mom, like just some fun personal life things. And I'm from Delaware.
I was just going to say, we have to know where you're from because the accent is showing.
I noticed it.
My Philly accent.
Water.
You've probably heard ours this entire time. A lot of
there were certain things. I was like, yes, the O is exactly what I was like.
Yep. Yeah, it happens.
So tell us a little bit about, so you work specifically, I got from that you work specifically with athletes. So tell us a little bit about how you, like your background in athletics and how you came to be a coach.
So I spent my entire life in sports pretty much. Like, I feel like as soon as I could get signed up into T-ball, I was in T-ball. I danced as a kid. I danced all the way up until second grade, and then I gave it up for soccer, which I ended up quitting in 2 years. I hated it. I played basketball most of my life, but softball was always my number one. Softball was everything for me. I absolutely loved it, and I played it year round. So we would have our fall season, go straight into winter training, all the way into our spring season, play through the spring and through the summer. And I really had 1 month off of softball in the entire year. And even then, in that month off meant I wasn't working with the team, but I was still doing stuff on my own. So it was literally my life for majority of my life. Then I went into college. I played Division II softball, where I majored in sports management. So I played 4 years there. Did my internship there with our strength and conditioning coach, who we worked with the team. And then after graduation, I went through a bunch of different obstacles, ups and downs of injuries and everything else along the way, the mental obstacles as well as the physical. And I always knew that I wanted to do something within the athletic realm, but I didn't know exactly which direction I wanted to take. When I first was looking at colleges, I was like, oh, I want to be a physical therapist. I want to do athletic training, and I want to do this, that, and the other. And then I had my first injury, and I was like, this is not the fucking life for me. I am not doing shit. And then in college, I distinctly remember my freshman year, I got hurt, and I was in the room getting taped, and half of the football team was in there at the time, and I'm like, oh, this was not the career path for me. I am not taping them ankles all day long. No. I don't even touching my own feet. I don't want to be touching anybody else's feet. So that was my okay, you're going in the right direction here. You're narrowing things down. And then from there, I was kind of introduced to strength and conditioning through the team, but then also personal training of I had worked with some one-on-one instructors through softball. And I loved it. And I loved that the intensity that they always brought. And I was like, this is something that I could see myself doing every single day. And I really, really love it. So I was always that person on the team that wanted to do the demonstrations and wanted to learn more about the programs that we were doing and that kind of stuff. And that's what made me realize okay, this is the career path I want to do. And I was always really bought into the training within the team. And it was one of the best compliments I ever received. My strength and conditioning coach said, if you think you're mentally tough, I want you to stand on this side of the room. If you don't think you're mentally tough, I want you to stand on that side of the room. So a couple of us had moved over, and I was one of 4 people that he was like, you're right. You are mentally tough. And I was like, bet, this is for me. I love this stuff. This is so much fun. So after graduation, got my certification in personal training. A couple years later, got my certification in nutrition. and was working in the gym. And then when I moved to Delaware, so I'm originally from Jersey. When I moved down to Delaware, I was like, I don't really want to go into another gym. I kind of want to like try and see if I can do this thing on my own. So August 2019, I started my business, which just so happened to be perfect timing with COVID right around the corner. So then, yeah, that's pretty much been a wrap. And through that experience of like starting my business and over the past few years, has really showed me that my passion is within like working with former athletes and helping them in that transition from life as an athlete to life as a not as a former athlete.
That's awesome. You've had quite the journey so far. I didn't know that you started your business before COVID. So do you feel like starting it at that point in time is different than if you would have started it after COVID?
Yes and no. So like at the time I had picked up another, just like I was a manager at some like local smoothie shop because I was like, I need an income. I don't know exactly what I want to do right now. Let me just get this job and figure it out. And I unfortunately settled and I was just like, I'll figure it out. I'll do my business on the side. And I really wasn't doing much at all. And then I got to a point where my boss at the smoothie shop was like not being the nicest fella and we were butting heads a good bit. And I finally was like, you know what? That's it. So we moved twice in Delaware. I used to live up in Wilmington. Now I'm further like towards central Delaware. And it was going to be too long of a commute. And I was like, no, like now's my time. I'm just going to go all in on myself. I'm going to show up. It's going to be ugly at first, but I'm going to do the damn thing. And then when COVID hit, it actually helped me tremendously because I had like already had like a little bit of foundation, and then I got to really like dive in and pour everything into it. And with everybody else being home, it was like, okay, like we're kind of paying attention to different things. We're on social media a lot more because we're not sitting in an office and our boss looking over our shoulder. So I was able to really like connect with more people and see what their struggles were and even just like help them through COVID. And like we've talked about it before of that transitioning from being very active all throughout life and then sitting at a desk all day long. So whether you're sitting at a desk or you're sitting on your couch at home because you work from home, like having that transition and building those healthy habits through that as well was like really, really impactful.
Yeah, I was just super curious because I did not start mine until after COVID. And I know for those of you who don't know, I am in a mentorship called WWBA. And so it is Link. And I'm just curious because I know Kendall, our mentor and the CEO, has talked about the difference in her business from like pre-COVID to post-COVID. And so I was just curious how you think that might have affected it because we are kind of in two different positions where you started pre-COVID and I started post-COVID.
It was just definitely interesting to see, like, I feel like COVID, especially like after the first like 2 months and when people were like, oh man, like this might be a new life for a little bit. And when we had that realization, that's when everybody really started diving into themselves because they're like, well, I have more time and like I'm home more, so I can get a workout in on my lunch break in my garage gym because I have the means to do that now. I don't have to drive to the gym, down the street or whatever. So that was like a really big turning point for a lot of people to start showing up for themselves, no matter what it looked like, even if it wasn't pretty. And I think that is what really made a difference in my business, was that I was able to be there with them through that time.
Yeah, I think it's super interesting. And I always say too, this isn't what we're talking about today, but I always say too that I have just noticed that when COVID like really sunk in for people and they're like, okay, like this is going to be the new norm for a while. Like we don't even know if it's going to get back to what our normal used to be. I think they started really realizing how important health was, because obviously the people who were at greater risk were those people who did have underlying health conditions. And I think people really said like, oh crap, like I really need to focus on my health and my wellness. And it's wild because I think about it all the time now, is that we are a little bit more removed now from the shutdown, that things are finally starting to get back to a little bit more normal, and businesses are like getting back to their pre-COVID numbers and everything. But what I've noticed is that now that we're in a state where we're not in a shutdown and we're not wearing masks and we're not doing all those precautions, it's almost like people have forgotten the importance, not completely, because there are people who are focusing a lot more on wellness now, but it's almost like some people are like, oh, I don't have to put much work into that anymore because there's not this danger where if you do have an underlying condition, then you'll be affected more. I don't know. I feel like people have kind of lost the importance on that. I think so many people, like, it dawned on them like, oh, I do need to keep myself in better health and better shape because I don't want something to come and then me be in more danger because I do have an underlying condition. And now that things are opened up again and everything, it's almost like a little of that has been lost. Like, I got really excited about it as somebody in the health and fitness world because I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to really ramp up the amount of people who are really going to be invested in like working on themselves for a different reason other than the physique aspect of it. And now that we're getting back to normal a little bit more, I'm seeing that like decline a little bit. And I'm trying to just like hold on to it and be like, no, don't let go of that, because it's still important, because something like that could happen again, like where something just comes out of nowhere and just hits us, and you never know. So yeah, that's why I was so interested to ask and see like what your thoughts were, because that's just something that I've observed as well.
I mean, I feel like the shutdown was like a smack in the face to everybody. And then now that, things like you said have kind of gone back to somewhat normal or most of the way normal, you don't have that constant reminder anymore. And it's making sure that, like, again, the habits that you're doing are sustainable and it's second nature. Like, it's not something that you think about of like, oh shit, like we could go into another lockdown, like let me stay on my healthy habits. Like, no, that's just, I want that to be your identity. Like the same way sport was your identity for so long, now you can make just like healthy living your identity.
And people are back in work more full time. I mean, I think a lot of people realized that they could do a lot of their jobs and their positions online from home, work more remote, but there are people who do have to go in, and because they didn't have to do that during the shutdown, they could put more focus and energy into working on themselves. And now that they're back, it's almost like taking that away a little bit again, which is sad. It's really hard to see, but we got to find that balance. So speaking of that though, like finding time, to work out and figure out how to mend it into your lifestyle, is today we're going to be talking about the difference between working out and just going in the gym and doing, whatever machines or exercises you feel like that day, what the difference between that is, and intentional movement and training for either something specific or putting a plan and program together to work on a certain goal.
Yeah, with that first one in particular that you talked about, you said the difference between just going in the gym and just kind of going through the motions compared to training or doing like some intentional, like intense activity in the gym. With that first one, you don't even have to go to the gym. Just getting movement in is important for a lot of people. And if you think that if you currently don't do regular physical activity and you want to get into physical activity and being more active, a lot of people think they have to take that jump initially going into straight intense training. And for most people, I don't think that's the case. That's not even realistic for a lot of people. That might not even be a realistic end goal for them. The initial starting points could just be going for walks every day for 20-30 minutes. It could be going on a hike, taking your dog for a walk, riding your bike, going for a swim or something, gardening. Just getting movement in, I think, is an important starting point for a lot of people. And it's okay if you don't want to do that intense kind of training, because I think that kind of deters some people from starting to make that change. A lot of people dread going to the gym, and that's a big part of it. They don't want to do it because they think that's what they have to do, and then they don't know what to do once they're there. You can just start going for a walk. That's a very big thing that will help reduce your risk of chronic disease significantly and improve your health, and is just great for a lot of things: your joints, cardiovascular health, mental health. It's just walking can be beneficial to you, just moving more.
I don't think people realize, especially the inactive population, I don't think they realize how much just doing, like you said, Zach, like going for a walk every couple days, how much that can actually improve their health outcomes. A lot of people get deterred from the gym, and you were kind of touching on this, because they think that they need to go 5 days a week for an hour and a half and have a stringent plan that they're going to follow at the gym, where most people who go to the gym, and you see this a lot with newbies in high school who are just starting to lift, they can do whatever the hell they want and lift with the worst form and zero plan, and they have no idea how many reps they did of each specific exercise, and they get gains because they haven't done anything. And that, even just that, can improve their health. Now it can hurt them too. I'm not saying just go there and go around throwing weights around willy-nilly, but for the inactive population that starts doing something physically active, that's going to improve your health way more than you actually think it is. So don't let you don't have to go balls to the wall and go 5 days a week, 2-hour sessions each time. Just start, like Zach said, go for a walk a couple times a week.
Lower the standard, like lower the barrier to entry. It doesn't have to look a certain way in order for it to still be beneficial, especially if you're just starting out. Like, that's when it's okay, how can I make this fun? How can I make it enjoyable? Like, the way I view it is there's a very massive difference between exercising and then versus like training. And like, I know Zach, you mentioned it, like going for the daily walks. Like, I do those things, not necessarily like, yes, exercise that helps me get my steps, awesome, but like for me, that's also a mental health gain. And like, that's what I'm focusing on, is like, that's my time for me and baby in the stroller, my dog right there with us. Like, we go for our little walk and we get some fresh air, and I live out off the beaten path, put it that way. And it's nice. Like, it's very scenic, and I get to kind of just listen to nature sounds and like have that time for myself. But then I also have a time where I'm in the gym and I'm pushing my limits and I'm trying to train hard versus just exercising. And I think finding that balance, like you said, Katie, of just like mixing the two and blending the two can be really, really beneficial for so many. But definitely starting out, like, take it slow, do something fun, even if that means like you go to your local park and you just walk around and like kind of just people watch for a little bit. If that's fun for you, then do that. It's like the old people that walk around the malls. Everybody knows that, like, grandma that walks around the mall. That's fun.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
Yeah.
kind of I was kind of like that old person over the past 2 years, because I have a membership to both the public museum here and the zoo. I'd go to both literally like twice a week, literally just to walk and like just look around. Like, I was the old people going early in the morning.
I
and
enjoyed
just
your Snap story every time you went there, or your Instagram story. I was like, oh, he's seeing the gorillas again.
Yeah, that was great. I think the theme that I heard from all of you guys, and that made me think of this, is that they, like, when you are doing movement for enjoyment, you are able to be more consistent and do it for longer without even realizing it. Like, if you are putting so much pressure, and like Link said, lower your standards. If you're putting so much pressure on yourself to lose X amount of pounds in X amount of time, or to look a certain way by a certain deadline, if you're putting this pressure on yourself, you're almost going to get more frustrated, fall off more easily, think about things in more of an all or nothing mindset of like you're either on or off track. And at the end of the day, you are going to end up resenting movement and all physical activity because of the way it is making you feel. So more so just finding movement that you enjoy. Like, I also, like Link, I love going for walks. I actually walk to the gym every day. There's this back path that leads to it from my apartment to the gym, and I walk when I can. I walk to watch my niece and nephew in gymnastics because they go right across the street. I walk to be in nature. I'll either put on a podcast or keep my headphones off and just listen to nature. And it is more of a relaxing, like, stress relieving activity for me. And it's also adding movement into my day for my body. So just finding the things that you enjoy, keeping it enjoyable, but also knowing the difference between when you do need just everyday movement versus intentional plan. Because if you are somebody who does want to reach a specific physique goal and enjoy it at the same time, like, it's okay to have a plan, but also just know that having a means to measure your progress is where the importance is going to come in. Because if you are somebody who does want to reach a specific goal, but you are going in and only doing the machines that you feel like doing, and you are missing like half of your lifting days, right? Then you're going to look back and you're not going to, if you don't know how consistent you've been over the past however many weeks, and you don't know how, like, the progress you've made because you don't have a way of measuring it, that's when it's going to become tricky, because you're not going to know if you're being consistent enough or if what you're doing is working, and how, like, based on how you're measuring it, if you're not having any measurable means here.
Are you saying that it depends? Link,
Yes,
that's
Gavin.
kind of our mantra on the Barbell Effect, is that
It
it
depends.
depends. We're gonna
Okay.
make shirts
We're going to get canceled for it someday, but
because we can't give anybody a straight answer. They'll ask, what's the best exercise for the biceps? And we'll be like, well, it depends on your goals and what you like.
but I think it's okay to have intentional training, and like those two things can coincide, like just going and enjoying your daily movement, or doing some type of movement that you enjoy, even if it's not daily, and having a plan. But you don't have to, like, it's not one or the other. It can be both. It can be one or the other. You're going to go through different seasons of life where you do have a specific goal, and therefore you do need a plan. You do need a way to measure your progress. And then there's going to be other seasons in life where it is just a win to go out and get movement, whether it's go biking or on a walk. Like if you Link, I'm sure you've experienced this, like where you wanted to add movement in, but you have a brand newborn baby who's crying constantly and needs your attention, every single day. So it's just like, it would be then just a luxury to go and have like some type of movement and be able to find enjoyment in your day that way as well.
I love that you brought that up, because that is something that was like a massive shift for me early on. And I mean, I say early on in motherhood, like I'm not still brand new, but
Yeah, right.
what I'm saying, when I first was like getting back into the gym, I remember like being in the gym, like in tears, like so frustrated of like, I can't just get through a workout without him crying or needing his diaper changed or fussing for God knows what reason. Like he's just crying and I don't know why. And it was defeating, because I went from this life of being able to train when I wanted, how hard I wanted, to whatever means I wanted to having restrictions and having like limits of what I can do and how quickly I can do them. And even the one thing was like, if I had a 2-minute rest break, I would be so upset, because it's like, well, I need to change this diaper in 2 minutes then. Like, how am I going to make this work? And being so like upset of like, how can I work my schedule so my husband watches the baby, or my mom can watch the baby, or someone can be there to help me. Now, 8 months, almost 9 months later, I have learned that it's actually better for me, and I get a better workout to literally sit him in like our little travel high chair or his stroller, give the boy a snack and be like, let me get my workout done. And he just sits there, he has little toys and he has his snack, and he like will giggle along as I'm dying through my workout. But like that's been more beneficial for me, as like to have him with me, where some moms are like, I can only work out during baby's nap time. So if baby's nap time is short, then my workout gets cut short. To me, I'd rather sacrifice that, like, okay, maybe my rest breaks are a little bit longer and it doesn't look perfect the way that I want it to, but I'm going to be able to get it done in a capacity that I want to, because this is what works for us. And like finding that like zone for you of like what specifically is working. In some seasons it's going to be just going for that daily walk, or if you work from home and you have the option to hop on a walking pad while you work, doing that for 10 minutes, there's your win for the day. Did you stretch before you went to bed today? Cool, there's a win. Like you did something intentional to help you move the needle forward. Some days that's going to look like a 5 to 10 minute stretch or a walk, whatever. Other days it's going to look like an intense training session where you hit multiple PRs, and finding that like zone where things just work for you. So it depends, I guess.
She's hopped on the bandwagon.
Yep, we got her. We'll send you a shirt.
We don't even have shirts yet, but we'll send you one.
I'll be waiting.
Also, I have to say, does your shirt say howdy bitch?
I noticed that
I
earlier.
noticed that. I was like, I
That's
love
awesome.
that.
Thank you.
I kind of saw the B like when you adjusted, and I was like, I'm pretty sure her shirt says howdy bitch, and I love it.
You fit along just fine. Or fit in just fine.
Yeah, I think it really just
Depends.
We get caught in this cycle.
Now I'm gonna lose my train of thought. Every time I lose my train of thought, so I'm like, I don't want to say that word. How can I say it without saying it? But yeah, like you said, you're just gonna go through different seasons of life. So like, guys, I know that you do not relate to postpartum and trying to work out. But is there anything specifically that you guys have experienced where you've been stuck in this, either like in a transition period, different seasons of life, or struggling whether to have more strict plan versus just going in and getting movement?
I can say for sure when I've been busy with work, it's that is when I've noticed that mentality the most. Where it's like you get done with work. It takes me right now, it takes me an hour to drive to and from work just due to construction. And we live in Wisconsin, but I work in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Um, but those days where work is just draining and maybe I don't love my job so much, the gym is not the first place I want to go. I just want to plop my ass on the couch and throw on New Girl and eat food. Um, but even when we were in Kentucky and I was in grad school, I mean, when I was working 2-a-days for cheerleading before their nationals trips, I had to find time to work out on my lunch break or afterwards. And it was like quick half-hour workout and then go. And that took a toll on me mentally. Um, but it's just one of those things where you only have so much that you can fill your cup with at the time, and sometimes you need to just say, hey, I got in and I went for a walk, or hey, I got my 20-minute workout in. That's good enough right now. Like, your life is busy as hell, like you need to give yourself some grace. And having that mindfulness and just saying, hey, like, it's okay that you are putting yourself a little bit more into work right now compared to your training. Having that mindfulness and giving yourself that grace can do a lot for your mental health. And I don't think a lot of people know how to do that, especially, when those seasons hit where it's something you haven't had to go through before. And it just it's a bit of a learning curve, to be able to give yourself that grace.
Yeah, I agree. I have the same exact kind of things, like just working full time plus being a full time student plus having the dietetic internship stuff. Like I said earlier, like I've over the past 2 years, I basically worked 6 days a week for the past 2 years straight almost. So like I definitely have days like that where like my primary goal is still bodybuilding, and like I still have a end goal of wanting to earn a pro card in a natural federation. But with all of this that's been going on, like it's been important for me to understand, like when I'm just mentally not there, when to maybe pull back a little bit. So like there have been days where like I just don't want to go to the gym, so maybe I'll take a rest day on that day, or I'll go in, but I won't necessarily train. I'll just kind of go through the motions so that I'm still getting that movement in, and it's still beneficial for me. It's that time to kind of unwind a little bit, but I'm not pushing myself to training with that intensity to meet that goal. My goal is kind of shifted for that day or for that situation. And there's this like similar things where even with bodybuilding where it's important to know when to pull back as well. So like after like a bodybuilding competition, like chances are you're fine if you take like a week off completely, or just maybe like pull back a little bit and give yourself like a rest week or take a deload. Even if it's longer for a week, like it's important to realize not to push into that because your body is under that stress, and you went under a lot of mental stress too, and you just need to take that break and just pull back a little bit, slow down, and it's okay to do that.
Yeah, as I was listening to you guys talk, what? Gavin's face went like,
Well, Zach's like looking at the ground. Is Aura doing something?
Yeah,
that's his dog, Aura.
I think she might be getting sick. She keeps licking the carpet.
She licks the carpet when she gets sick.
You don't do that?
Yeah. So
No.
like when they get sick, like they eat grass.
Oh, I knew
and
that.
like fur gets on the carpet, so I think it's like licking up the fur to kind of have the same effect as grass does.
Got it. Okay.
Our older dog does that, and she's doing it right now. I think it might kind of be the heat too, because it's hot in here and we don't have AC, and I just have a fan going.
Oh, poor doggy. As I was listening to all of you guys kind of talk about the season of life of like being busy and just kind of giving yourself some grace, I still think it's important to note that there's a difference between pulling back a little bit and still having, intentional training programmed, and being somebody who is like, why am I not, like, if you're questioning why you're not making progress and not, moving forward with your goals, it could be because even if you're busy, you can still have properly programmed training and nutrition. And obviously, if you're in a busier time, let's say work is really stressful, maybe you're going through something in your family or in a relationship, you can still pull back and do it at a lower, like to a lower extent. But if you are somebody who's like, I don't know, like I'm going in the gym and I'm doing the like machines and I go for runs here and there, but you're confused why you're making progress, it might be because you don't have that intentional training programmed. You don't have a proper program. You're just going in and being like, oh, I feel like doing leg press today, and then maybe I'll do a little bit of bicep curls. If you're somebody who's just not recognizing that, it's probably because you don't have any way to measure what you're doing and you don't have like a consistent program built in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just gonna say, you need to collect the data. Like, you need to have something to go off of. The same thing even goes with consistency. Like Zach, you mentioned, like there's times where you do go in and you kind of are like kind of floating through the motions, but that's helping you stay consistent. And that's like a piece of data that you've collected to say like, hey, I know that this works for me, and showing up, even if maybe I don't really want to, or I don't have the full energy in the tank to do so, I can still show up in a way that like helps me collect that data and still move the needle forward.
Yeah, and I think there's kind of that where Katy was going with that too, is where you feel like you're going in and doing the right things, but you're not making progress. You might just be lacking intensity with your training or the right type of training. So like specifically with bodybuilding, I think people like get caught up in beginners a lot of time that they don't see progress. And that's because they're not training with intensity. They're not going near failure. They're stopping like once it starts getting a little bit uncomfortable. And that's probably a major reason why. Like I, even over these past couple of years, just because of like what I've been going on, I've been trying like new methods of training and everything. Like a big part of it was training with a certain amount of reps in reserve. And I think trying to like be optimal can hold people back too. I noticed that personally. Like I was trying to be optimal as much as I could the past year or two, and I think it limited my intensity a little bit because I wanted to make sure I was recovering enough and having the right amount of reps in reserve, and it being at the right RPE. And looking back on it now, I was like I simply wasn't training with intensity. And like over the past probably, I'd say 8 months, like around the beginning of this year, I changed like my training style to higher intensity, less volume. And so like I take most of my sets to failure, sometimes a little bit past, and like I've been starting to make progress again. And for some people, it might be the opposite. Some people you might need to pull back a little bit from training too intense. But again, it's just trying to figure out what works best for you. Maybe what you're currently doing isn't the right thing to reach your goal.
Something that, Zach, I know you'll kind of resonate with this, especially in regard to bodybuilding and just muscle building in general and moving with a purpose. I kind of spoke about this in regard to the name of my business being Motivated Movement. Well, every movement in the gym has a purpose behind it, and you should really understand what that purpose is. So if you're doing leg extensions, the obvious purpose of that is to increase your quad growth. Now, while you're doing these leg extensions, you don't want to just throw the weight around and just say, okay, I'm moving the weight. You want to actually think about squeezing your quad muscles and contracting them as hard as you can throughout the entire movement, and relaxing the weight back down, still squeezing your quad muscles, moving with a purpose. And I know that gets into a very specific point into this conversation that we're all having. But that is one thing that I think people don't realize in the gym. And it took me a really long time to apply that to my training specifically, that, hey, when you're lifting or you're doing a specific movement, you should be trying to feel said muscle that you're trying to work throughout the movement. I know that's very specific about this topic, but
No,
I
it's
see it a
really
lot
good point.
too. I'm sorry. With
No,
my
I sh-
clients, I'll just like program them something, and maybe it's like a 90-second rest break, and they'll come back and they'll be like, oh, like, I didn't feel like I needed the rest break. So, I just did like 30 seconds and I drove back in. I was like, oh, baby, no. No. We need to turn it up a notch then. The easiest way to go about knowing if you're training hard enough, if you have programmed rest, you should need that rest. Plain and simple. So like, I feel like even no matter what RIR you're training at, so I use RIR a lot. And I have times where it's like, we're training until failure at this point. But then there's other weeks where you're in a busier season and it's like, okay, let's dial it back. Let's focus on like 1 to 3 even, and just give you a little bit of a broader range. It doesn't sound like it's very broad, but in an RIR term, it is. But having that like bigger window to work through, and then being able to say, okay, I got done my split squats and I did one leg and then I took a break before I did my other leg, because like I was toast after my left leg was done. I needed a break before I did the right. And having that as like another form of like gauging your progress and your like intensity level is really beneficial too.
I feel that with Bulgarian split squats. I was just doing them yesterday, and I remember finishing a set, almost collapsing, and think, oh my God, I still have to do the other leg. Katie, I know you wanted to jump on there for a second.
Oh no, I was literally just saying that was a good point. I didn't have anything else to say after that. We were just trying to talk at the same time, but yeah, I was just gonna say that was a good point.
Awesome. Does anybody else have anything to touch on when it comes to that topic?
I think the biggest thing is just recognizing like where you're at, and then moving from that
Mhm.
point, like not comparing yourself to anybody else or anybody else's journey. Like I could look at you guys and be like, damn, like I want to be training with them. But if I'm not at that point and that's not my time in the journey, then I need to recognize that. And again, lower that barrier, find my starting point and work from that starting point out. So going back to like versus the walk versus the intense training or the intense lift, like knowing where you're at and then making moves that it's going to help you move the needle forward in a sustainable way. You don't want to just move the needle forward for 3 days and then you're done. You want to be able to move the needle forward for a lifetime.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
just depends.
Zach. Oh my goodness. Yeah.
I think we're losing our East Coast friend here to the
Yeah.
darkness.
My phone flash.
It's
Well,
working.
Why don't we wrap up the episode? If you just want to tell us a little bit about your specific business and then drop your socials too.
Yeah. So like I said, I work mainly with former athletes working through what I like to call my 4-phase method. So we start off by just, laying the foundation and making sure that you have healthy habits in place. And then from there, we just kind of kick it up a notch, make sure everything feels good, turn up that intensity, and then make it a lifelong, like I said, move that needle forward for a lifetime, not just for when it's convenient or when, now is the time. Like this is a lifestyle change, and it's something that, you look forward to doing every single day. So you can find me on Instagram at _link fitness, LINK fitness. I'm working on the TikTok thing. We're getting there. And then I also have my own podcast. It's currently being switched over. So the new name of the podcast will be Elevated Athletes Podcast. But yeah.
Love that. I'm so
Nice.
excited to listen. Well, I hope that we link up again. Haha, no pun
Haha.
intended. And do
We don't
another
have cool names.
Yeah, Link, you could do so much with that in your business and your podcast. But yeah, let's collaborate again. I think these were really good topics, and I'm excited to talk to you again in the future.
For sure. Thanks, guys.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
As always, thank you so much for tuning in with us. For more free content and to stay in touch, be sure to give us a follow. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok, homerun_fit for Katy,
Gavin_Geltz for Gavin, and Z Chomicki for Zach.
Also, feel free to email us with any questions or topics you'd like to hear on the pod at thebarbelleffectpod@gmail.com. We'll be sure to link all of this in the show notes for you as well.
Lastly, if you like this episode, please leave a rating and review so others who can benefit from what we offer can find us. Until next week, keep moving, don't eat like an asshole, and fucking stay hydrated.